Welcome back to the ICND1 video series, and in this video we'll be talking about how we can connect to a Cisco device to configure features and functionality. So when we get our Cisco device, the configuration on it is very minimal, and that when we get our Cisco device, we can't just power on and then expect it to work and function properly as a switch or as a router. With Cisco devices, we have to access those devices and we have to configure features on those devices so that they work as expected. With some vendors such as Netgear, those devices are known as plug and play. So when we buy a router, when we buy a switch, we're able to take it out the box, power on, and it works without us having to do anything to it. Those are obviously normally good for, let's say, your home office or your small home office. With Cisco devices, they don't work like that. They come with very minimum configuration. So once you power on the device, we have to actually go onto the device and configure features on it so that the device can work as expected. So as an example was a router. By default, a router will not allow us to connect a switch to it and connect to the internet. We would have to go into the router, do some configuration on it, so we're able to connect other devices to it and we're able to connect to the internet as well. With switches, depending on which kind of module or switch you buy, it's the same thing. You can purchase a switch, a Cisco switch from new. You can plug it in. So obviously you'd plug in the power cable, you'd power on, and when you connect your device to it, nothing will happen. Your device won't be able to communicate and they won't be able to be part of the network. So with Cisco devices, we have to go into the devices themselves and we have to configure features and functions on those devices so that they work as expected. So there are many ways that we can connect to a Cisco device. There's 3 or 4 main ways. So 3 of them are with a wired connection. The 4th is with a remote connection over a network connection. So the first way, which is the most common way, is to use what's called a rollover cable. A rollover cable is a special type of cable designed to allow you to access Cisco devices. And the way it works is that on one end we'd have what's called a DB9 port or a DB9 connection, and on the other end we'd have an RJ45 connection. And so the way it works is that the DB9 end would go into our PC and the RJ45 end would go into what's called the console port of our Cisco device. And so what this allows you to do, this allows you to have what's called a console connection, so a wired connection to our Cisco device. And with this wired connection, it's not like an Ethernet connection which allows us to connect to the network itself. It just allows us to have a wired connection so we can configure our Cisco device. And normally the console port is located on the back of your Cisco device. So let me just make this very clear. These type of connections aren't used to connect to the network itself. They're just used to connect to your device so that you can do all the configuration for your device so it can work as normal. And so this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is what a rollover cable looks like. This is the DB9 end. This would go into what's called the serial port of your PC or your laptop. This is the RJ45 end, and this would go into the console port of your device. Now, with some newer devices, such as some newer switches and routers, they actually come with what's called a USB console port, which allows us to use a USB cable to console connect to the device so we can configure features and functions. And so this is a kind of like a diagram of what it looks like. Obviously, what we would do is that we'd plug in the power cable to the device so that it boots up and goes on. Then the RJ45 end would go into the console port of the device, and the DB9 end of the rollover cable would plug into your laptop or your PC and would plug into the serial port. And with this connection, we're able to access the operating system of the device, of the Cisco router or the Cisco switch, and from there we're able to configure features and functions so that the device can operate and work as normal. Now, with the second connection type, it sorts out a problem which is common in modern PCs and laptops. So, with our modern devices, a lot of them don't even have a serial port. So, with the rollover cable, with the DB9 connector, we can't actually connect it to our PC or our laptop because most modern devices don't support a serial connection, a DB9 connection. So instead, what we can do, we can use what's called a USB to DB9 adapter. And so the way it works is that the DB9 end, this is your rollover cable. So to make it clear, we're still using a rollover cable to console connect to the device. And this is normally used when we have when the device supports a rollover cable connection. So the way it would work is that this is your rollover cable. It would plug in. The DB9 end would plug into what's called a DB9 to USB adapter. So the way it works, we have a DB9 connection here, and we have a USB connection here. And so the way it works is that the USB connection would plug into your laptop or your computer, and the RJ45 connection end would plug into your router or your switch and into the console port of your device. And so this allows us to connect to the console port of a device with a rollover cable and a USB to DB9 adapter when our own PCs and laptops don't support a serial connection. So just to see what it looks like. So this is normally what your USB to DB9 adapter would look like, and as you can see, this is the DB9 end. So you'd plug this into here. This would go into the console port of your device. This is what a RJ45 connection looks like. And this is all tied in together. As you can see, the rollover cable, the RJ45 end goes into the console port of your Cisco device. The DB9 end would plug into the adapter part, this part over here, and the USB part would plug into your laptop or your PC, allowing you to have a console connection to your device, so you can configure features and functions. And like I said before, in some more modern Cisco devices, it actually supports a USB connection, allows you to connect to the console port via a USB cable. And so the last wired connection type is simply just a USB connection. So all it is that you can buy a USB console cable for specially made for Cisco devices. It looks like a rollover cable, apart from obviously the connections are just USB connections. So the way it works, the mini USB end would go into the Cisco device, and the fat USB end would go into the PC, to your PC or your laptop. So again, this is the way it looks like this physical cabling. So what I'm trying to say, this end, so the mini end, would plug into the console port of your Cisco device, and this fat end over here would plug into your laptop. And so this is what it looks like in real life. So the fan plugs into your laptop, the mini USB port end would plug into your router or your switch, and this allows you to have a console connection into your device. So there are three wired connections which allow you to have configuration of for your device. So they did allow you to have a wired connection in, allow you to configure features and functions of your device. Normally you would use a wired connection when you're first setting up your Cisco device. So when you first purchase it, it doesn't have any network connectivity, or an IP address or any sort of setting. So you would have to have a wired connection in, either via a rollover cable or a USB cable, and you'd have to physically connect to your device, and you'd have to configure the features on your device via that wired connection. Now, once your devices are set up and are connected to the network and are functioning as normal, it would be a massive pain if for every time you had to go and configure a new feature on your device, you would have to go to where the device is located, whether that be on the first, second, third or fourth floor, and you'd have to have a cable connection into your device so that you can configure the features and functions. So once your device is set up, you can access the device via the VTY lines, which is all it is. It's just a remote connection into your device so that you can access your device from anywhere. Like as an example, you don't have to be in the same office as where your Cisco device is located. You could be in a different country, in a different state. It allows a remote connection into your Cisco device. And the way I like to think of this is like having remote desktop connection but for Cisco devices. So all VTY lines they're virtual lines which allow multiple remote connections into your device. So as an example, most Cisco devices will have at least 5 VTY lines. So VTY lines labeled 0 through 4, and all that means is that when you connect remotely to your Cisco device, you occupy one of those VTY lines. By having 0 through 4 VTY lines, it means so numbered 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have 5 remote connections into your Cisco device at a single time. And so normally we would use a remote connection into our Cisco device for configuration once it's already been set up. So once we've done the base the base configuration, we've given your device an IP address, it's got network connectivity, all the base configurations done, we would then be able to remotely access the device via its IP address, and we would be able to configure the features remotely from the comfort of our own office or our own home. So there are two protocols that we can use to remotely access our device, and those are SSH and Telnet. So Telnet uses TCP port 22. SSH uses TCP port 22. Telnet uses TCP port 23. And these are protocols supported by Cisco devices, which allow us to remotely access those devices and perform any configuration changes that need to be made. The difference between these two is that Telnet sends all the data in clear text, SSH sends all the data in encrypted sort of thing. So the way it works is that with Telnet, when we access our Cisco device remotely, normally we have to enter a password. That will be sent in clear text. So any configuration changes, any passwords we enter will be sent in clear text. With SSH, all data sent over the network is encrypted. So if somebody does manage to capture any data that we're sending, they won't be able to read it. With SSH, you have to provide a login name and a password as well, so it's more secure. So we can create local accounts or accounts on on some sort of like database server. And so with those accounts, we could give each person a unique login account. So when they log in, they'll be using their own account, and we'll be able to track any changes that way. So SSH is preferred over Telnet. Telnet poses a massive security risk, and normally when we configure our Cisco devices, we will disable Telnet connections and only allow SSH connections into our Cisco device. So now that we have a connection to our Cisco device, either via a remote connection or a wired connection, we need to have some software that we can use in order to interact with our device. And the software that we network engineers use to actually interact with our Cisco device is known as a terminal emulator. All a terminal emulator does, it allows us to communicate with our router or our switch. So with a terminal emulator, it'll be software running on our PC, which allows us to communicate with the Cisco switch or the Cisco router. And with the terminal emulator, we're able to access the Cisco operating system via a command line interface. So think of it as like a program which allows us to enter commands, and with those commands we're able to send those commands to our Cisco device or Cisco switch to configure different features and functions on our device. So usually with a terminal emulator, all configuration changes to a device are made through a terminal emulator. Normally, these terminal emulators are command line based, so we'd be brought to the command line of the Cisco iOS software, of the Cisco iOS operating system. Or Cisco iOS is the operating system running on the Cisco device, which allows us to interact with that device and configure different features and stuff. You could think of it as like how Windows 7 runs on a PC, allowing us to access different applications and different features, or like Windows 10 or any of like the Linux-based operating systems. Or Cisco iOS is a specialized operating system made for Cisco devices, for Cisco routers and switches. And with a terminal emulator, we're able to access the Cisco iOS via a command line interface. And when we enter commands, those commands are sent to the router or switch, and the router switch will process those commands. And with those commands, we can activate different features and different functions on our Cisco devices. So listed here are some examples of some terminal emulator programs. The most common ones are PuTTY and Teraterm. Those are both very, very good terminal emulators. They're very easy to use, and because they're free, obviously that's an another bonus. Secure CRT. It comes with more features than Terratem and Putty, but it's not free. I think it costs like £80 to purchase. Hyperterminal, again, it's free, but it doesn't have as many features as Terratem and Putty. Normally, I either use Terratem or Putty because I find that they have enough features for me to be able to use, but they're also simple to use, and also they're free, which is again a massive bonus. And normally, so for this course, I would recommend probably going with Putty or Terratem. Again, very simple terminal emulator programs to use, very basic, but also have enough features and functions which allow for either a remote connection via terminal or SSH, or allow you to connect via a rollover cable as well. So they support both type of connections to a Cisco device, allowing us to configure features and functions. When we before we actually access our Cisco device, when we start up the terminal emulator software, before we confirm the connection and try to connect to our device via the terminal emulator software, we have to make sure that our terminal emulator has the following settings in order to ensure that text is displayed properly, and so that when we actually when the command line interface of the switch or router is shown, that is shown properly and that there's no garbage character to come up on the screen. So normally bits per second should be set to 9600, data bits should be set to 8, parity bits should be set to none, stop bits should be set to 1, and flow control should be set to none. If these settings aren't correct, then it means that our device won't be able to interact with the switch or with the router properly. So as an example, when we try to enter commands, they might not be displayed on the screen, or they might not be sent to the switch or router properly. When we press enter, what's called the screen will hang. So by hanging, it means that it will stay blank. What we're trying to type up won't actually appear on the command line interface of the terminal emulator. When you press enter, those commands will not be sent to the switch or router properly. So it's important that we configure our terminal emulator with the correct settings, so that we're able to successfully interact with our device and perform any configuration changes as needed. So we've reached the end of this video, and we've seen the different ways that we can connect to our Cisco device. Just to make it clear, we're connecting to our device so that we can configure it, not so that we can connect to the network and be able to share resources and communicate. Just as a quick recap, we can use a rollover cable, so it runs from your PC or laptop to the switch or router, RJ45 end on the switch or router, DB9 connector on the PC end. This kind of connection isn't very common. The reason why is because modern PCs and laptops don't support a DB9 connection. Instead, what we would normally see is that we would use a USB to DB9 adapter on the PC end, and then connecting to the switch or router, we would use a normal rollover cable. So again, RJ45 end on the switch or router, DB9 connection end on the PC, but we do a USB adapter, USB to DB9 adapter, so we can connect the rollover cable to the adapter and then connect that to the USB port on our device. Modern devices support a straight USB connection to the console port of the Cisco device. And then once we're set up, once our Cisco device, Cisco router has a connection to our network and is functioning properly, we can then remotely access it via terminal or SSH from our computer, so we can make any configuration changes as needed once our device has originally been set up. And then we would use a terminal emulator program so we can actually interact with our Cisco device, interact with the operating system running on it, and make any configuration changes from the terminal emulator itself. So in the next video, we'll be talking about the actual Cisco IOS, the software which powers our routers and our switches. And we'll be talking about the different modes, and actually how to navigate the Cisco IOS and use it correctly. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.